The different forms of trauma. Presented by the Ward and Wellness Services. In association with C.J. Ward Creations. The following are difficulties particular to childhood traumatic bereavement that can emerge at any developmental stage: obsessive recollections of the death. These can manifest as nightmares, shame, or self-blame over how the person died, or frequent or intrusive thoughts about the heinous manner in which the individual died. Avoidance and numbing of the senses. These can manifest as withdrawal, the youngster seeming unconcerned, or the child avoiding reminders of the deceased, the manner in which she or he died, or the event that precipitated the death. Physical or emotional manifestations of heightened arousal. Irritability, rage, difficulty sleeping, impaired attention, a reduction in grades, stomachaches, headaches, increased vigilance, and anxiety about one's or others' safety are only a few examples. The relationship between trauma and grieving symptoms in childhood traumatic grief is such that any thoughts or reminders about the person who died, even positive ones, can lead to fearful ideas, images, or memories of how the person died. Children who have had childhood traumatic bereavement may be distressed by three types of reminders: reminders of the traumatic event, places, situations, people, views, scents, or noises that remind you of the death. These could include the location of a deadly accident, a parent's death bedroom, or the sound of an airplane reminding a youngster of a mother who died in a plane disaster. Loss reminders: people, places, items, events, ideas, or memories that serve as a reminder of the person who died, such as photo albums or a new coach who has taken over a child's sports team. Reminders of change: situations, people, places, or things that remind the child of changes in his or her life as a result of the death, such as moving to a new residence or having to walk home with a babysitter instead of an older sibling who died. Interventions. Childhood traumatic grief is a condition in which children experience severe trauma symptoms as a result of the death of an attachment figure, such as a parent or sibling, or another significant person, example, grandparent, other relative, friend or peer. The child's capacity to do grieving chores is hampered by these trauma symptoms. Children's trauma symptoms and poor mourning responses can be resolved with effective therapy. Other therapies are potentially successful for treating childhood traumatic grief, but have not been formally evaluated for this disease. These include models like child-parent psychotherapy, CPP, that have specific descriptions of how to apply the intervention for childhood traumatic grief, and or models like child and family traumatic stress intervention, CFTSI, and cognitive behavioral interventions for trauma in schools that have been implemented specifically for children with traumatic grief. Separation as a child can be traumatic. Traumatic separation is a disorder in which children experience trauma symptoms as a result of being separated from their parents or other major attachment figures, example, siblings, grandparents, etc. The separation could be temporary, example, due to parental immigration, incarceration, or placement of the kid in foster care, or permanent, example, due to parental immigration, incarceration, or placement of the child in foster care, example, following termination of parental rights. Despite the fact that no empirical studies have specifically examined the efficacy of any intervention for children who have experienced traumatic separation, there are strong theoretical reasons to believe that effective interventions for childhood traumatic grief will also be beneficial for these children. Children experiencing traumatic separation, in particular, experience trauma symptoms as well as symptoms connected to the loss of their major attachment figures. Childhood traumatic grief therapies contain elements that address both trauma and loss. And grief-focused components can be adapted and applied to the temporary loss of separation rather than the permanent loss of grieving. Traumatic grief. While many children adjust well after the death of a loved one, others experience chronic challenges that interfere with daily life and make it difficult to recall happy memories of their loved ones. After a death that was abrupt and unexpected, example, through violence or an accident, or a death that was expected, a kid may have a traumatic reaction, example, due to illness. Childhood traumatic grief may be present if the child's reactions are intense or prolonged and interfere with his or her ability to function. Effects. Each child grieves a key person's loss in his or her own unique way. Children in the same family may react differently depending on their age, ability to accept death, and personality. Any death can be upsetting for a kid, and a variety of emotional and behavioral responses are frequent, including changes in sleeping patterns or eating, sad, angry, or worrisome feelings, social isolation, recurrent thoughts about the death, or a sense of the person's presence nearby. Grief problems in children differ depending on their age. Developmental level, previous life experiences, emotional health prior to death, and family and social context. Some children experience catastrophic grieving reactions, making it difficult for them to remember or appreciate happy memories of the departed person, cope with the various changes that occur as a result of the death, and continue to develop normally. Any thoughts about the individual, even good ones, can trigger disturbing images or memories of how they died. These images may recur in the child's mind. And because they are so distressing, the child may avoid thinking about or talking about the person, as well as traveling to places or doing things linked with the person or death. Traumatic reactions can increase mental health problems, hinder learning, and be misunderstood by parents, teachers, and others.